Here's the problem with self-awareness. Everyone tells you they want to increase their self-awareness. No one really wants to do it, because when you do, you have to say, ooh, that's me. I do that. How do you find who you are? How do you find that self-awareness? First step is to be honest. I need to stop reacting emotionally and trying to protect something that is killing me. Take a step out of the comfort zone is a big one. The person you are working on is you. You are the only you're gonna have. We don't have demons. We have parts of ourselves that we haven't learned to love yet.
How to solve any addiction. So that's the question we are tackling today on the Upward Spiral podcast, a podcast that is dedicated to help you create positive change and continuous momentum in your life. I'm your host, Michelle O'Brien, and I'm really excited to have you here today. So now, honestly, whether you're battling a sugar addiction, social media obsession, or maybe something more serious, this episode is packed with practical strategies to help you break free. I struggled with my own addictions, and so I know how tough it can be. But trust me, change is possible. And to guide you on this journey, I brought an incredible expert, a renowned psychologist, published author, and addiction recovery specialist, the amazing Dr. Faust Ruggiero. Faust, please tell me I said your name right.
Michelle, you got my name right, and thanks so much for inviting me on. It's a pleasure to be with you this morning, your time.
Yes, this morning, my time. I always love this when people are on the other side of the world. I always say to everyone, hello from the future. But thank you so much for coming on today. Actually, I'd really like to start with what maybe feels like a little bit of an obvious question, but I'd like to understand the definition of addiction.
For me, people love to go into the compulsion, but really addiction for me is something that we put into our lives. We make it a mainstay, often the center point of our lives, and we do anything in our power to make sure we maintain our relationship with that substance or that thing or that person, whatever it may be. It becomes the dominating force in our life. And whether that's obvious or very subtle, we never put that down.
I think probably a follow-up to that is, can you explain the core components of like the addictive cycle, like maybe regardless of substance or behavior involved?
Well, I started working with addiction way back in the day when if you were an alcoholic and you went into an AA program and you said, I'm a cross-addicted alcoholic, they'd say, you don't belong here, because, alcohol is not a drug. To me, when you start getting into the components, the progression of addiction is really what I look at. It is, and you said it as you were introducing things. You were talking about training the brain. The brain, our brain, beside a thinking machine, it's a learning machine. And we normalize things that we do. And when we talk about progression, I talk at the progression of normalization. What we normalize, you look at someone who drinks a bottle of scotch at night, and to them, that's a normal way to do things. Progress to that point. We look at that and we say, that's absolutely insane. It's this process of normalization, the way the brain, another word for this, it's habit formation. It's the way the brain says, I am now creating this space that I will live in. And the brain tries to accommodate whatever we do, whether it's good for us or not. Smoking a cigarette, you smoke that first one and it almost chokes you. And then your brain works with you to normalize that and help you do what you want to do. So when I look at that part of it, for some of us, we can't normalize addiction. I'm one of these people that, doesn't matter what I do, I'll stop. And I remember in the early day when the person who was training me, I asked him, why do you want me? Because everyone I knew said, if you're not it, you don't know it. He said, no, we need people who know how to train us in what's real and what is normal and help us fashion our view of what normal is, not what we think it is.
How do these substances, and I'm kind of talking maybe more about the alcohol, the smoking, even excess of food, it's not comfortable, it's not enjoyable. The first time you have a drink, the first time you have a cigarette, the first time you like overeat, it doesn't feel good. Like how do we get to that point between like that first one to it being so normal?
That's the training piece, little by little. It's incremental change. The brain very rarely says, "Okay, gee, I had 2 drinks last night. Oh, I can't wait to drink. I'm gonna drink 10 tonight." It goes incrementally. It can't learn with those big thrusts. It has to have very little, increments of change. And it's sort of like when you, if you're a person who, maybe you're 120 pounds and you ate and you ate, now you're 160, but the people in your house see you every day. They don't notice it like a person who now steps into your life who hasn't seen you in 3 years and looks and says, "Hi, what happened?" But because that incremental change we don't see, and the brain does that too. That's actually why we can learn. It's a positive. The brain, if we train it little by little and we work with it, we can do just about anything. The problem is when we apply that to things that are obsessive, the brain accommodates there too.
But why when we've woken up after a heavy night or a huge binge or, 2 packs of cigarettes or whatever it is, why do we wake up in the morning and we're so hungover, we feel so rough, we're like, "I'm never doing that again." Why do we do it again?
Because the
Yeah.
brain is not processing the rational part of this. The addiction takes over. That's what I was saying in the beginning. Addiction takes over, and the euphoria that is created changes the brain neurology. So now we're pumping all those neurotransmitters into the brain. We're changing that whole chemistry. And the brain gets used to that. It's the same reason why for some people, when they go into recovery, they will fail miserably because their stimulation level, this, oh, I just love, the nightlife or if you're in business, you go out and you have that high level business meeting and you come back and you had all these drinks and the brain likes that part of it. And then you go, and the brain is willing to say, "I'll put up with that other part." And that's how it starts in the beginning. Then it gets into the grandiose parts, Well, I'm broke. I'm losing my marriage. They fired me from the job. All these things are happening, and I'm still going because I am not going to say it's that drug or that alcohol or that other thing I'm doing. It's the other thing that we rationalize, we deny, we get into these modes of thought where we say, "Well, that wasn't what did it." The fact that I come home and I drink a half a bottle of whatever every night, and then I get up the next day and I don't feel good and I have a headache, and you get that your tolerance level goes down and your motivation level goes down with it, and then you're not functioning. No, it's not that. It's the spouse who did this and that rotten boss and all these other things that come into play. And yes, those are there, but we don't realize we created them because we drank our way or we drugged our way into it.
Completely, and I think so much of as well is normalized, and when you talk about kind of like your brain is rationalizing it, a lot of it was for me was all my friends and family do, my parents do, everybody around me is drinking. This is normal. It's normal to be drinking 4 or 5 nights a week. It's normal to be waking up with a hangover. This is just it, and I used to keep telling myself, "Oh, but I had a good time, but it was fun." I'm really everything that you're saying, I'm like, "Okay, this is making a lot of sense."
I always tell the story. It was a family party, and there was a young girl who had just turned 21, and she was drinking, and I could watch her really setting herself up. And she comes up to the bar and she looks at me and she says, "If I have one more drink, I am going to have a rotten tomorrow." About 30 seconds later, she says to the person who was being the bartender at the party, "I'll have," and then she ordered whatever she was ordering. And I just thought to myself, conscious decision to say, I know what's going to happen in the morning, but I'm going to do this. It starts there. Again, it's interesting. Those incremental changes begin to destroy our world incrementally. They don't just come in and bang, it's gone. I mean, unless you're a drunk driver and someone dies and something traumatic like that. But for the most part, the negative changes, that downward spiral is slower. So just like the person gaining the weight, we don't see it. We don't see that little by little we're losing uh, people, we're losing money, we're losing our health, all different kinds of things. And we don't realize that it's happening. Then all of a sudden, we're putting our feet firmly at the bottom and saying, what in the world happened? And I don't understand it because it happens so slowly. I mean, it may be a year, maybe 2, or maybe 10, depending on the person, but it's not fast enough for our mind to process it and say, look, that happened. You lost that friend. You lost that relationship. Your kids are not getting what they need. You're not home. You're at the bar after work, or, you're not eating, you're eating too much, you're gambling, all the thing about all these addictions is they affect the neurology of the brain the same way.
And is there like a scale of addiction? And the reason why I ask this is because what we're shown in media is an extreme. When you see a gambling addict, he's lost his house, his debt, he's in debt. It's the whole life is apart. When you see, people sitting in Alcoholics Anonymous, they're a shell of themselves. Like alcohol has taken everything from them. What you don't necessarily see is maybe the people who are still functioning, the people who are reliant. So I would say I was reliant on alcohol, but I wasn't dependent on it. Like I hadn't got to that point where like my body needed alcohol to function. It was like I was reliant on it to connect with people.
It becomes
Yeah.
your connection device. It becomes part of what we program into how we live our lives. So, when people come into my office and some of them they're relying on alcohol or whatever it is that they're involved in. And they'll say, well, it's not a problem. I'm not addicted. I'm not drinking in the morning, give all those kinds of things. And I say, has anything in your life changed? Because if it's not a problem, nothing changes. You're still healthy. Your brain is working well. You're not shirking your responsibilities. You're not losing jobs and relationships and friendships. You're not where you shouldn't be when you should be at home or whatever. All these things should not be changing. And if they're changing, then you really have to be honest with yourself and say, all right, what are we doing? You know what I always do with people? I always say, let's do a test. All I ask for is 60 days. Don't drink. You don't have a problem, right? No, I don't. You can do without it. I can. Good. Let's do it. And I know we all know that if you go 60 days, you're going to look back and say, wow, this is different. I'm relating different with this person, the job. You're going to see everything increase. Some people get to that point. Most people have a problem and then they bargain and they say, well, I can have a little bit. I was doing a lot more, now we start that whole thing. Um, uh, d- Definition of alcohol problem. Something changes in your life. If you drink, you drink water all day long, that's how your life will proceed. Yeah, nothing should change in your life if the things you do are not problematic. You can be addicted to golf. Now you're in front of the TV every day. Now you have to be on the golf course almost every morning. When you're done playing 18 holes, you go to that 19th hole, which they like to call that, and you sit at the club and you enjoy. And by the time you're done, you spent a lot of money. Um, you're driving drunk when you leave. You are not home with your family. You know, Many things are changing there. Your relationship's going to change. Very few spouses say, "Yeah, go play, do what you want. Come home. You're half drunk. It's 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock in the morning. You're going to go take a nap for 3 hours." Yeah, nothing should change if we don't have a problem.
This is so interesting because it was almost like I hit my rock bottom, but I didn't stop drinking for another 6 years, you know? Like, but I did remove myself. I was living in London and I was um, burning the candle at both ends. There was a lot of drink, a lot of other substances as well. And I left. I was like, I have got one-way ticket to Asia, and I moved to Singapore, where drinking is legal, but nothing else is. And that was, enough. I think at that point, for me, it was such a big lifestyle change. But I still had this niggling feeling that that wasn't just it. That you know, part of it was a potential thing, but part of it was just like I didn't like who I was when I drank. And it still took another 6 years for maybe me to realize that alcohol was actually part of the problem too. I think I was in denial from it. So you talk about kind of things changing. Can things happen retrospectively like that? Is that normal?
It's all stuff that's on our timeline. We go through it, and it's just as you said, geez, how come I'm 6 years and I'm still doing this, and I get this all the time. What people will do, and the reason that they do it and they keep drinking is because they change everything on the outside. They geographic changes, job changes, friend changes, whatever it is, because all of those things were obviously the problem, and they go and change them. And the alcohol, they don't change. When we run out of things to change, then we have to come home to who we are, and this is what I'm doing, you know? And, it's like the fellow that goes out and he has, he's at a party and they have some drinks there, and, I just have one that I'm dealing with, and I said, "Well, did you drink a lot there?" And, he says, "No, I had 3 or 4," and his wife happened to be in the session and says, "Yeah, and you had 3 or 4 before you left, and I drove over," she says, "and when we came home, you had 2 nightcaps. So you drank a lot yesterday." When they totaled it all up, it was just over a half a bottle of vodka that the man drank. We do all those little games. It's a whole chapter I wrote, have in the book that I wrote, the games we play. And the games aren't only while we're addicted, the games are there because we take them right into sobriety, which is one of the reasons why people have a difficult time in sobriety, is because they're coming out of being an active addict. The brain has been trained to be that, so it uses what it knows to begin the next step, unless we get that S word everybody hates, we surrender. And then we say, "Okay, I can't. You show me, and I'll follow everything you say." And there aren't that many addicted people that do that right away.
No, I think it's that's the hard bit.
Yes, it
But
is.
before we get into that or bit about surrender, like I think for myself as well, like many people believe addiction's simply like a lack of willpower. Um, is that true?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Yeah, I wish people would stop saying that, because what it does is it makes people believe that people whose neurology does change, or there's something wrong with you, really want to drink, you could stop this anytime you want to. It doesn't work that way. I just put someone into a rehab last week, and he came and said, I'm done. And said he was using a drug he wasn't even getting high on anymore. It was just getting right every day. He's just and finally got him in there. When he got there, his mother said, "Oh, no problem. You'll be able to get this beat right away." And the first thing that happened was he went into shock and left the rehab, and they put him into a hospital. And then he came. So this is not what people think it is. People who don't have an addiction, easier time changing some things. Yeah, willpower can figure into that a little bit. Not when you get into an addiction. It's not just the brain chemistry changes. Structurally, the brain is changing. That's the part that people don't understand. As we damage the brain, it has to create new pathways. So structures are changing in the brain. That's why AA is right on the mark with this. They said that 2-year period. They say, please don't do anything. Don't get into relationships. Don't make major decisions. Don't do all those things, because it's not just about getting yourself entrenched in sobriety. It's allowing your brain to change and to actually get healthy again. And that takes a while.
Yeah. And so you've talked a little bit about like the neurological factors. What about the psychological factors?
Well, they're even deeper because, what we do is we train the brain, and the brain is not, again, in addition to thinking and learning, it's a survival expert, and it does anything it can to survive. But the problem is when we're throwing euphoria into the picture, now comfort becomes misconstrued as a survival need. Now, if I don't use this, my whole world is going to go off. I can't do this. And so now we have this whole thing where we're trying to uh, change our behavior, but the brain is saying, this is going to be a problem. So let's deny, let's intellectualize it, let's rationalize it, let's blame it on someone else, let's do all these other things because we're convinced that, consciously or more often unconsciously, that if I stop, I don't know what's going to happen to me. So I just keep this going. And then that's why alcoholics primarily will do things like make little changes. Well, dry January, all those things to convince us that we're okay, but that's not going to happen because we firmly believe that our survival is tied to that substance.
When you talk about it like that, like I have a real problem with sugar actually. And and it's something that I haven't overcome yet. And I'm kind of hoping that talking to you today and reading your book might help me with that. Um, just before kind of we talk about maybe triggers and root causes, are there any other misconceptions about addiction that you encounter with your work?
There are a lot of them. The first one is that somehow I'm going to do this. I'm going to fix this on my own. Okay. Of course, I've been in this for 20 years or 10 years or whatever doing this. And why haven't I? Um, you need help. It's an addiction. You're not in control. You think you are, you're not. First step, always, get it out of your own head. Get it out of your own family, because the addict isn't the only sick one. The family members are, but it's that an addict's problem. So that myth that you can do this on your own. If you did it on your own, you probably weren't a true addict. Things didn't change. Some people can drink a lot, and I mean, I know people that come home and they'll drink their 6-pack or their 7 or 8 beers or their, uh, 4 or 5 cocktails, and nothing seems to change. Very few of those. Um, but, for the rest of the people, no, you've got to get it out. You got to talk with other people about it. You're asking your brain, which has become affected by your drug of choice, whatever it is, to look at information rationally and then make rational decisions. The very fact that you affected the brain is going to stand in the way of you doing that efficiently.
Yeah.
Get it out of you and get it to someone else and talk it over and say, and then be honest. You have to, that you've got it. You can't say, well, I have 4 or 5 drinks at night when it's 10.
So in the book, you emphasize the importance of self-awareness. And this kind of leads on, I think. Could you just, okay, maybe even explain like what you mean by self-awareness and how do we find it?
That's something I've been teaching in all my books and years and years of counseling. How do you find who you are? How do you find that self-awareness? The first step is to be honest. I call it brutal honesty. It's either going to be the thing that scares you the most, or it's going to be your best friend. When you get to the point where something happens and you say, let me just tear this apart a minute. Let me take a step back. get my emotions out of this. It's another thing I talk about, intellect over emotions. Not that you can't emote, but get the information first. There's only the only way you're going to get to know yourself. I mean, you think about it. I want to know myself, so I'll lie to myself. Well, now I can't. So I have to be brutally honest with myself and with those people closest to me. I need to stop reacting emotionally and trying to protect something that is killing me. I have to look at the facts honestly. I have to get the facts not from my friend who also drinks or drugs with me. I have to get that from the right sources, from counselors, from people in addiction, from the medical people, whoever. You need to get the right information. Then you need to be able to slowly, slow your life down enough so you can interpret that information and see how it applies to you. Be honest with yourself, get the information, go slow enough to do it. You're not going to get this information fast. Nothing we do that works happens fast.
Hmm. And like, if I feel like maybe looking at this from like a partner or a family member of someone who you can see is struggling, but they don't have that self-awareness, because I think maybe some people are just so in this, consumed by what's going on, or in that bubble, or don't want to change, or maybe as a partner or somebody who cares about somebody who's in that position or who's struggling with addiction. How can you help them gain some self-awareness? Like, is it possible?
Here's the problem with self-awareness. Everyone tells you they want to increase their self-awareness. No one really wants to do it. Because when you do, you have to say, "Ooh, that's me. I do that." I have a new book coming out on internal language and the way we talk to ourselves. And I did an interview last week, and I said to the person, if we could plug something in where we, electronically, we could pull all our thoughts out and we could show the person what we think, and we'd be horrified that they would know what goes on inside our heads. We all want to be self-aware, but to be self-aware means absolutely honest. You have to go in and get it. Can family members help? Yes, as long as they themselves are willing to do that. Otherwise, they're going to protect themselves. Family members protect an addiction. They don't want that getting out. That's happening in our family. We don't want that. No, they're having a bad day. This happened, and it's not. No, it's addiction. And and you know how it works. Okay, so it gets out. Then you go into treatment. Then you get better, and everyone says, that's a brave family. Look at what they did," and everyone is singing their accolades. But everyone's so protective about this problem. If we want to do this, then we have to be completely honest with ourselves. The people that I counsel, I get them there. One of the first things I teach them is how not to be afraid of that. You're going to go inside and get some things that are horrible, but you're also going to get a lot of beauty in there. You have to be willing to go in. It's not about what you find. It's just the process of doing it. It's a process. Learn the process. Keep doing it. Now things happen and people are bringing it into themselves, into a person they know, and say, "Oh, I want that," or "I don't want that. I know that about me." Or if I do this, this is probably going to happen.
So, what are some of the exercises or techniques that we can use to dive deeper, to maybe identify the root causes or understand the emotional or psychological needs that the addiction might be fulfilling?
Those differ from person to person. When you look on it in a general way, I've given you a couple of those. The first thing you got to do is slow down. And not, take a step out of the comfort zone is a big one. Switch up things in your life. Go home tonight and try not to drink. Or if you're a drinker, see if you can have one or two. Test yourself is a real good way to do all this. Keep testing yourself. Don't come to conclusions without the test, without the information. Almost everyone with an addiction who stays in it says, "I'm not in it. It's not the problem." be willing to say, of course it is. So what? The only thing I'm looking for, I'll speak for myself. Only thing I'm looking for is to wake up every day, feel my power, feel what I'm capable of doing that day. And I want to go out and do it. I don't want to say, well, I can't, I thought I was going to do it, had it on my list. You know what? Today I don't feel so great. And then that goes on, and I look back and there's a mountain of things behind me that I didn't do because I made something else more important. When you drink, it's about, okay, you drank, now you lost that time. You lost the recovery time from alcohol. You've lost whatever else you didn't do, and the money and the relationships. There's so much loss. I don't want to feel any of that. So self-actualization, self-awareness tells me I have to know what's going to happen if I make that particular decision. And in order to do that, I've got to be completely honest. And that honesty may say to me, yeah, you can't do that. Well, so what? I want to be,
The-
I want to be powerful without crutches.
yeah. Like sometimes like brutal honesty though is like, I can't do it. I don't think I can do it. I don't think I can live without this thing. What happens when you're at that point where you're
That's beauty. That's not fear. I can't, oh my God, I can't live without alcohol. I just got to my root cause. I just got to the point where now I said, hey, I can't do without it. But by that statement, I'm an addict. And there's a program there for me that I can use. People whose arms are open and waiting for me. Unconditional love and respect in that room. I can go there. Now I have to be willing to take the next step. And I have to make one other decision. I have to make a decision to get uncomfortable, because I have yet to meet the addict who stepped out of an addiction and into a new unknown way of life and said, wow, this is great. The brain isn't there yet.
I wasn't ready. I'll be honest, like I wasn't ready because I didn't think I didn't think alcohol had as much of a hold over me as it did. And then when I stopped, wasn't expecting the following kind of 6 to 12 months of real like inner work and the insights that I got about myself and the demons that I faced. And I worked with an amazing psychologist here. And it was interesting. The once I'd stopped drinking, I had the capacity as well to be able to do that work. And this is why the podcast exists, because it was such a transformation, and it didn't happen overnight. But I couldn't believe that just removing this one thing and then, yes, being uncomfortable and doing the work, but has changed me so much. And what's amazing is I always say it's not changed me. I've not become somebody else. I've become who I was. I've become the person I was meant to be, the person I always was inside. The substances changed who I was, and now I'm back to who I'm meant to be. But I wasn't prepared for the work. But I'm glad I did it, obviously.
There's a secret to the work. And I've been teaching this for years. And the ones that, when I say it, first they go, and then they go, oh, it is, you have to enjoy the work. The person you are working on is you. You are the only you're going to have. Yes, you've lost some things. Some people will have done horrible things. You're going to go back into yourself, and you're going to find all the little things you need to do to fix this. They're all in there. I keep telling people everything we have, everything we need is already inside us. We threw a lot of junk on top of it. That's what we did. We're just clearing things off. And you mentioned demons. And I always tell people we don't have demons. We have parts of ourselves that we haven't learned to love yet. That's all they are.
I love that.
We don't have demons. I mean, a person who is evil and wants to go hurt people, okay. But the rest of us, I'm facing my demons, and I say to them, what are they? they're you. And you've got to be able to say, you're beautiful. I'm a beautiful person. I know that's in there. Maybe I haven't used it. I haven't acted that way. My brutal honesty is going to connect me with that. That's all it's going to do. I got some things in the way, but
Yeah.
demons? No.
Yeah, what came out of it for me was I'm a good person. And like and I know I'm a good person. And yeah, I've made some mistakes and I've done some things that I'm not proud of. But I know deep down now that I'm a good person. And I can say that. I can say that I'm proud of the person that I've become. And I can say that because of my journey and my sobriety and because of learning to love maybe the sides of you that or learning to forgive the sides of you that you weren't so proud of.
All of us have this. I love when people come in my office and they'll sit in the other side of the desk and they say, well, you've got this all worked out. And I can see you've always been able to do this. And I just start laughing. And I said, would you really want to go to a psychologist who never had a problem in his life? How in the world would he empathize with you? We all have this. And it's a work in progress that never changes. We should be able to get up every day and say, see what I can come up with. That's fine. When I send people to AA, for example, I say 12-step program, and they say, oh, that's a program for addicts. And I say, no, it isn't. It's not? No, it's a program for everyone. I am not addicted. I use it every day of my life. I don't think that the founders, I don't think John W. had that in his mind when he said, let's just make a program for alcoholics. The reason it works is because anyone can use it. What it's doing is restoring people and getting them back to what normal life is about. But you do realize that most people don't use the program, and you can see it when they don't use it.
Yeah.
Even people who don't use a substance, they're not surrendering. They're not taking inventories. They're not helping other people. They're just not doing all the things.
Yeah.
It's a program for life.
So that actually kind of brings me nicely onto the next kind of question or section, really, which is the practical strategies for overcoming addiction. What are maybe let's start kind of with the cravings and the breaking free of an addiction cycle. What are the strategies there that we can use?
The first strategy is the one I brought up. Don't try to do it alone. Understand, if you really think you stopped drinking or drugging or whatever it is that you're doing, and now the great part of your life has begun. No, now the work has begun, and you need to go into that. That's your first strategy. You got to be able to say, okay, I put that aside. Maybe I just started to drink many years ago and I got addicted, or maybe there are other things that I'm medicating with that. So now the first order of business to get off the substance so my brain can think. Now I need to be able to surrender to the work and be able to say that every day I'm going to get up and do that. I talk about coming out of an addiction and into recovery as an exit from one style of life to another. You leave a job, you should have an exit plan to get into the next job. You are leaving addiction. There needs to be an exit plan and that plan is something that you're going to be working with. The 12 steps are a plan. And then incrementally every day, you're going to work that plan. Strategy, you plug in every day, every single day. If it's going to a meeting, if it's working with your sponsor or an addiction counselor or whatever it may be, you must have other people in the program. You cannot do it alone, and you have to have a plan. You don't just, your addiction, let me say it this way. Sobriety is the antithesis of addiction. Do the opposite of what you did in addiction. You had no plan. You got up. You were spontaneous. You did whatever you wanted to do. You shirked responsibilities. You kept yourself as comfortable as you can be. All those things don't apply when you're beginning a recovery program. Now there's repair work. You're going to go out and deal with all the people who you hurt. That you're going to go, you're going to make amends. You're going to get your body in order because you probably beat it up. You're going to should hopefully get a counselor involved if you can. You're not just going to a meeting and sitting in a room and doing this. I'll just get into the easy speaker meeting with the 100 people and sit in the back of the room. That you're going to take commitments, and you're going to get a sponsor, and you're going to work those steps. You're gonna let people guide you. That's your strategy. That's all you can take in the beginning of recovery. There's a whole new world. I dealt with. It's interesting. Last year, in the same week, I had a person who was in an addiction for 12 years, and a person who came out of prison after being in 11 years. Interesting how both of them said, I have no idea how to live this life without what I was doing. One had physical walls as their prison. The other one had a substance. Neither one of them knew how to deal with the world. Each of them needed guides. That's the strategy, to open it up. Then your strategies will evolve with your guides. As you get proficient at one thing and close this item out, you move to the next one, to the next one. And that's what life's all about. Let people in, have an exit plan, work that plan, admit to yourself you don't know. And that's a great place to be. I get concerned with the people who come out of addiction and say, I know what I'm going to do. Those scare me because I know where they're going. But the ones that say, I have no idea, can you help me? I'll do whatever you want me to do. I'll do that. Then I say, great.
Yeah.
Let's get you in programs. Let's get sponsors. Let's get your family involved. Let's do all these things. Let's attack this thing from all different angles. But let's do it slowly, and let's have a plan.
Yeah, and you know what? I've never I've never just really sat down and thought about it like that. Like thought about, of course, and as soon as you've said it, and I've worked in advertising and for my whole career, and we have a plan. We write a brief, we develop a strategy, we work against it, we execute it, we try different things, figure out what's working, what's not, and move on it. And I know, I don't know if this feels a bit naive of me, but I've never looked at addiction recovery in quite practical terms like that. You know, and having that guide. If AA is maybe not right for you, what other programs or what other ways could you go at this, or could you help develop that plan?
I think the first thing before I answer that is to say to yourself, why is AA not right for me?
Okay.
Because I get this all the time. I really don't get anything out of that. Or when I go there, I'm with all these people and they're talking about drinking and I want to drink and I get all these kinds of things. I want to make sure people are not saying, I don't want to go there because there's a commitment involved and there's work. I have to leave my house. I mean, you can do them online now, but the good ones, hitting the room is the best way to go. But even if you do it online, you have to go, you have to attend. Sooner or later, they're going to call you out and say, well, you want to read this passage, or you want to speak, or you want to give your testimony, or whatever you're going to do. People get threatened by that. They want to stay in their comfort zone. And I tell them, if that's what you're talking about, and you want to stay in your comfort zone, that's what an addiction did. Go try. If you really can't do it, then the next step is to get in with a counselor who is an expert with addiction and recovery. And because that may not mean that AA is not for you. It may mean that you're just not ready at that particular moment. Maybe need to clear a few things out. And get yourself ready to do those things. Everybody, it's okay to do this thing differently, but whatever you're doing, it's a plan. People look at the psychological, emotional, physical parts of addiction. There's a business plan that has to be in place. Sobriety has to be your personal business, and you have to be able to be accountable to that business plan.
Yeah.
And when I explain that to people that way, they say, like you said, never thought of it like that. if there's a plan, you're not doing it all at one time. It may take 5 years to evolve. You know how business is. We have a 2-year plan, we have a 5-year plan, and we have our long-term plan and our goals. That's great. And then what do we do every day to make that plan something that becomes a powerful way for us to live life? Having a business plan.
And the reason why I asked the AI question, the AA question, was because when you were talking about creating a plan and a strategy, my mind immediately, and this may be very millennial or Gen Z of me, I'm not Gen Z, just on the record, but the went to, well, could AI not draw me up a plan and a strategy for what my recovery could look like? And then I can go off and independently execute it. But what I'm hearing from you is actually like it's connection, it's community, it's support, it's having a guide. It's not, the plan is important, but it's not just the plan. It's accountability to real people. Is that right? Am I right?
Yes, absolutely. A lot of people have asked that, we can probably start programming and saying, well, you're going to miss something. AA doesn't put his arms around you. AA doesn't look in your eyes and see the fear. If someone's counseling with me and at the end of the session, we've covered some pretty intense things. When that person leaves, I've got my arms out, and people will say that, I mean, and not a lot of us doing that anymore. But if that's what's necessary, that's what's necessary. So AI won't do that. It won't connect with that fear part. At least not as we know it yet. Maybe 10 years in the future, they'll do that when robots take over the world and then we just follow along.
I was talking to an AI expert on a different podcast last week, and we were just talking about how everyone will have, our kids will have, and our kids will have personal AI assistants who will basically be with them from birth and will coach them, and maybe addiction won't be in the same way anymore, or mental health problems won't develop to such severity because you will have this AI assistant coaching you from a very young age, which is good in a way, but then also terrifying in a way that you've got this AI parenting your children. But fascinating and interesting to see how it's going to evolve.
Yeah, the world's going to evolve. We're not going to stop it. All those things are here. They're here to stay. But even, and people will say, well, we can ease up on this because we'll probably get to there. And I say, you know what? Again, our brains are going to create this AI. I'm hoping the brains creating it are sober brains, because we still have to do this. But you know what? There's fun in this. When you get to the point that you're working on yourself and you start making the advances and you say, I, I didn't think I could do that. That scared me. I never wanted to be part of that. And I just did that. There's the brain hears that. The brain understands that and says, wow, let's do more. So it's sort of like if you're an exercise person, you could barely do, 5 minutes on the treadmill, and now you're doing an hour. Well, how did you get there? Because the brain helped you normalize that healthy routine. Just like it normalized the addiction, it will help you normalize a really beautiful way to live life if you give it a chance.
So just to come back to the technology thing, are you seeing a lot of, I was about to say clients, patients for technology addiction?
Yes. It's even a chapter I wrote in the book. Cell phones, gaming, all that sort of thing. And it's not just the addiction. I mean, it's like any other addiction. I have parents that are coming home and they're spending 2 hours at night, cell phones and what have you, and kids are in rooms and they're on their technology. And we're at that point now where technology is a little better than a generation old. So the people, who were born in the mid 90s were actually brought up with machines. That's what they know. They carry them everywhere. They do everything with them. So is it an addiction? Yes. And does it change the brain? Mhm. Absolutely.
Yeah. How, with something like technology, which genuinely is something that we cannot live without now. Like it, unless you decide to go and live on a remote farm and be away from it, it is something that this is very much part of our lives. Like, how do you manage that? Because this isn't something like alcohol where you can say, I'm going to turn my back on this forever. We cannot do that with these devices.
What I tell people is use them sparingly and make sure you keep your contact up. I work with a lot of businesses and, of course, I get emails, I get texts from them and I always make them half a little crazy. I get the email, I text, and then I call them up and I say, just got your text. I'm calling you up so that we don't have to text for the next 10 minutes. When we could talk for 60 seconds and get this all cleared up and say hello and how are you doing and hear a voice. So mix it up a little bit. If they're there, you're right. We're not getting to the point where we're not going to use it, but why don't we mix it up? Make sure you call people, make sure you get out and you're with people and not just in your house and devoting your life to a machine. Be around people, be willing to call them instead of just texting.
Yeah, I love a phone call. I also like a voice note as well, unfortunately, for a lot of my friends, in sending them 20-minute voice notes. But at least they get to hear the voice and hear the real story rather than an essay of text. So just so on the so just as addiction, I see it as a journey. Overcoming addiction is a journey, not a destination. How can people, or how can we keep maintaining that momentum and not falling back into old patterns, not relapsing? How can we keep that good work going?
That's what the program tells us, one day at a time and be humble. If you get to the point that you say, I got this, you just told your brain, okay, you can stop now, stop learning. We got this. And that's when everything falls apart, because while we continue to learn, the brain continues to focus on what we've changed and to continue to grow. But when we get to the point that we're, hate to say it, but arrogant enough to say, I got this, there's no learning anymore. And that's what we did. That's what people do in the addiction. I know what I'm doing. Don't tell me I know what I'm doing. Well, we don't want to bring that into life. And I don't want to make it sound like you have to be this benevolent little church mouse. No, go live life. Have a good time, but continue the work every day. Have a great time. Do the things you like to do. Absolutely put them in, but stay close to your plan. There's plenty of time for both. And they are essentially, you interweave them because it is all one part of you. When you get to the point that you understand that part of you, it's a lot of fun to get up every day and say, I got that. And if I don't know, I'll figure it out. And if I can't, then probably wasn't for me. And let's move on.
I think one thing that surprised me is like how much joy returned. The things I used to find joy in as a child and before the drinking, before the lifestyle change, and it returns. And I think we always say there's your baseline, and when you have that substance, your kind of baseline is raised, but eventually it comes back down, and everything kind of raises and feels great again.
And that's where the picture becomes clear. That's where you start looking at things and saying, those were all desires. Here's the things I need. And all those little simple pleasures make me really happy. And I don't need that intense, that adrenaline rush that I was getting before. I don't need that. It was burning me out anyway. And, I can sit down and play with the kids. And what a great time we had playing that stupid game that I thought I would hate.
Exactly. And I think it's slow, but joy comes back for sure.
It does.
I just wanted to touch just for the last few minutes on something personal that I'm struggling with, and that is honestly like a sugar addiction, and very different to how it was with alcohol, but I'm finding it much harder to stop. And I'm in cycles of restriction and binging, and there's inflammation. It doesn't make me feel very good, but there's huge kind of emotional connections. There's huge pathways in the brain that I think have just been cemented in there from childhood. The birthdays, the Christmases, the s'mores on a campfire, the Easter eggs, which is kind of where we're at this time of year. And I'm struggling. Now, I've never made a plan. And so maybe that is something. And it doesn't feel as extreme as well, right? If we're talking about alcohol and gambling and drugs and smoking and, all of these addictions and technology feel very extreme. And sometimes when I talk about my struggle with sugar, it feels indulgent rather than a serious problem. But I cannot stop.
We've just talked about the brain's willingness to change the way things really are. Many addicts will lose their primary addiction, they'll go to a secondary one. Sugar is yours. As you were talking, you were saying, well, it's not really alcohol. It's just sugar. It's just an indulgence. Did you hear yourself? It's an addiction. That's the first thing. It's a full-blown addiction. As I'm talking with you, I can feel some things that you don't maybe want to talk too much about, but there's shame and guilt there.
For sure. Yeah. The tubs of frosting that I eat with a spoon, there's a lot of shame here.
You could just be into a secondary addiction, or sometimes it's what I found with people is that we've gotten through the first level of addiction, which is also the first level of whatever's in there, things that the demons, you call them. You may be keeping some old demons down with a new addiction. Plan is the best place to start, and you do the same things you did with your addiction, with alcohol. Right now, what I've heard you say is, I didn't decide to stop this yet. There was a point where you bottomed out with alcohol and said, that's enough. I'm done. You did not get there with this. That's the first thing I'm hearing. Second is, based on that, you will have a plan when you say, I'm done. Yes, I'm going to get uncomfortable. This is going to suck. I hate this. I mean, this is a lot of pleasure, and it tastes so good. It's not even alcohol, which tastes lousy. It tastes so good, and it's legal, and who cares if they see me eating? What are you doing? But okay, whatever, but you can't stop. Your brain knows it's an addiction. So when you say, I'm done, then you can put a plan together. But right now, you're doing what everyone does. What we all do with something that is addictive to us, we start a plan before we say, I'm done. So now we say, well, I'll try that. Well, I won't do it today. You know what? If I don't do it for 2 or 3 days, I don't think it's an addiction. Or I'll just have a little bit, a few cookies, whatever. And then I realize I've got the tablespoon. Now, not the teaspoon, it's the tablespoon. And here I go.
Yeah. It's like I'm going to bake a cake with my kids just so I can eat the tub of frosting. It's not about them. It's about and because this is the whole justifying it, because I'm a small person, I'm not overweight, I'm fit, I'm healthy. It's like it's society's terms, it's not a problem. I don't look like I've got a problem, but I know I've got a problem.
Ask your pancreas how it feels.
Yeah, I know. I can feel it in my intestines when I have a binge. I'm in pain. But I want to be done. I really want to be done. Why am I not done?
Because you don't want to. Oh, you want to be done. I should continue that statement. I want to be done with the symptoms, the pain.
Yeah.
But I don't want to be done with the tablespoon. When you want to be done with the tablespoon, you'll stop.
How can I get there?
You start by getting real honest with yourself and say what you didn't say before. I am a sugar addict. This is an addiction, full blown, just like my other one.
Yeah.
If you can get there and firmly believe it, then you'll get honest. Then you'll beside the physical things, you'll start looking at how it's affecting your emotions, how it's affecting cognitions and all, because it will. It's just, we're not meant to have that much sugar in our bodies. Then you'll be able to say, okay, I'm also seeing all the other things. Another thing I would do is, talk it over with your husband. Say, what do you see?
But what he doesn't see, because I actually will go and eat the frosting in but I'm laughing, it's not funny. It's like, what am I hiding from him?
We used to call them,
Well,
the closet alcoholics. So you're the closet sugar right?
I'm not sitting with the big pie with the frosting and the cake batter, like literally cake batter. It's okay.
You can use the old rehab trick, the mirror trick, where you look and say, I am a sugar addict, and see if you believe it. See if it looks like it fits. Start there, but just as an exercise. But what you told me is it's progressing like any other addiction.
Yeah.
And that's okay. But you gotta know what you want to do with it.
Yeah.
Not the symptoms. The alcoholic says, I want all this to stop. I don't want to stop drinking. The pot smokers are our newest addicts, and they're all doing the same thing. Pot that doesn't get addictive.
I go on holiday for a few days tomorrow, just for kind of 5 days. And I think I don't want to take my laptop with me. I want some time to kind of reflect. And I think after our conversation, this is something I really need to sit with and
get it out of you. Get it open up. He needs to know everything. If you do that, that'll really be representative of your decision to say, I'm going to stop this, because, once I'm willing to let it out and I'm not hiding, something, I'm not, I'll run out to the shop and have like 4 lattes or something like that. I mean, people do it all the time. And, these are all the things I do. And I always tell people, before you tell your husband that, make a list of everything. Because once you get 3 or 4 things out, you're going to stop. I'll guarantee you.
Thank you so much. This has been so helpful, and I've really loved talking to you today, and I'm so grateful for your time.
It's been a pleasure.
Is there just kind of anything that you would like to talk about before we go?
I love to close interviews out by just reminding people it's not that some of us have power and some don't. We all have it. We have to be willing to go and get it, to work with it. Try to stop following the crowd. They're not leading you anywhere. You don't even know who the leader is. Be your own leader. And when you go in yourself, you're not going to find yourself. You're going to create yourself. That's what this is all about. You'll find some great things. You'll find that you have more power, more strength than you thought you did. But you're going to go in every day and say, "This is who I want to be. This is what I have to do to get there, and I'm going to commit to doing it." If you're willing to do that, life gets good. It's not complicated. It's a very simple premise. If you're willing to do that, life gets good.
Faust, thank you so much. I'm going to link to everything below, all of your books, and really thank you so much. And to anyone still listening, any comments, I'll make sure that we both respond. And thank you so much for listening. If you're struggling with any form of addiction, there is help out there. And again, we'll link to AA and maybe some other resources below as well. But yeah, thank you very much. I hope you have a lovely day.